August. Can't imagine how fast this year has gone. Here we are in August, and in a few months we'll be singing Christmas carols, and it'll be the end of the year. Are you ready? No, no, I can't believe that summer's over already. Kids going back to school. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. This is SJREI Online, and I miss seeing you guys live. Hopefully we can have an event live before the end of the year. If not, definitely early next year. SJREI is where the deals happen, and you can ask me anything real estate. Here's our disclaimer. It essentially says that you are on your own. Everything that we offer is for education only. Please do your own due diligence. Seek out your own legal and tax professionals before making any investments. We are not liable for any damages, losses, direct or indirect, that are from your decision to move forward with any of our speakers. Our mission is to provide to you education, networking, and inspiration that allows you to make wise and profitable decisions in investments. If you've been here before, you know that this is where the deals happen. SJREI is focused on helping you do deals. We want to see your lives impacted. We don't want you to just come here for edutainment. We want you to come here and actually learn so that you can impact the lives of your family and your heirs. So I want to talk to you a little bit about one of my coaching students. Her name is Selja, and she wrote this email out to some investors that are working with us on a project. She said, as you may know, I've been Lori's student for 2 years, learning a great deal about real estate. I thank Lori for her invaluable coaching that helped me to find this property, and I'll show you the property in just a minute. I have come a long way and met wonderful people. One of my goals, I mentioned to Lori in her initial interview, was building a community where adult children and their aging parents could live close by. This project is a dream come true, and I'm fortunate to be a part of this. I would never have thought I could do something this grand, but I'm excited to see more come. So this is the project that Selja found. Let me tell you a little bit about her. She has no real estate experience, but this lady invested in herself. She learned and she trusted. She went out and started making phone calls, as embarrassing as she was embarrassed to make phone calls because she felt like she didn't have enough knowledge to be doing this, but she still did it. And she was able to identify a particular area in San Jose that was going through some redevelopment. So if you look at the pictures here, the picture on the right-hand side, the old building, this is a Burbank antique store. This particular area is going to be redeveloped into a lot of higher density urban village places. She was able to identify it, and with my help, we were able to work with the agent, and we actually were able to put under contract and control an entire block here. So we've been working on this for several years, and we made our submission to the city, and you can see on the left-hand side by Crane Watch. There was an article in the Silicon Valley Business Journal about the project that we have. And this particular project is exactly what she was talking about. The back side of the project will be assisted living. The front side of the project will be retail and condos. So people can live in the condos, have mom or dad and mom or dad in the assisted living, maybe have them over for dinner, and make sure that they're returned home and taken care of. And the location of this is phenomenal. Let me show you where it's located. So in this particular screen here, just to orientate you, San Jose is on the right-hand side, and oops, let's see if I can get my little circles. This is the location of the property we have. It's over by the 99-cent store, and it's near O'Connor. Westfield Santana Row, and Santa Clara Medical Center. So this particular area is going through redevelopment. And like I mentioned, we were able to acquire an entire block here between Boston and Brooklyn. So here's what the parcels look like. We have 7 parcels. It was 3 different owners. We negotiated with all the owners. At this point, we only closed on 1, so our carry cost is very low. We closed on the very center one, number 53 here. That ensures that this project won't be sold out from underneath us. What we're doing is called entitlement. We're taking it through and telling the city that this is what we would like to have built on this particular property. We aren't actually doing anything as far as knocking buildings down, building anything. Right now, it's just going through the entitlement process. So here's some renderings that our architect has done and we've submitted to the city. It'll be 6 stories on the front and 5 stories on the back and wrapping around the side. It'll have underground parking, a nice entrance for dropping off at the assisted living memory care center. And this is called a section. This is what it looks like if you were to chop the buildings in half. So you can see here, the 6th floor will have townhouses with mezzanines and patios, then each floor. And this is our parking with the mechanical parking. So this is the condo retail side. And then the back of the property will have the senior care side again with the mechanical parking, and in between a beautiful courtyard. So this is like if you are looking from the top down, you can see the back side at the top of the screen. Again, the lobby, and then making sure that it's controlled entrance in for the employee spaces. They will have a view, full glass view of the courtyard, but the courtyard will actually be accessible for the condos. If this is a deal that interests you, we were able to put it together so that we can partner with other people. And basically, this is a value add deal. We're offering equity with a preferred rate of return. We anticipate it's going to be 18 to 24 months. We've already raised 1.8 million, and we're looking for the remaining 1.2. We will either sell or cash out the equity by 10/22. The minimum investment here is $100,000. It's open to everybody, accredited or non-accredited, as long as we can approve you. So we're offering an annualized 15% or 1% of the profit, whichever is larger. We anticipate the profit on this project to be at least $5.8 million, which means that if you invested, you'd get $58,000 in 1 year, or worst case scenario, 15%, which is $30,000. So why is this a good deal? Well, it's in one of the hottest redevelopment paths. It's a signature project. Every time people drive by it, they're going to go, I remember when that was Antique Row, or I was part of that changing over. We've already gone through initial studies, and it's very much supported by City Council and the staff. We don't anticipate a lot of bumps along the way. It's recession friendly because we get forced appreciation regardless of what the economy is doing. It's short term, 18 to 24 months, and we anticipate a double-digit annualized returns. And again, remember, it's very low risk because we're only carrying the one property. The rest of the properties are under contract, and we don't have to make any servicing of the debt on those. So if this is something that interests you, please go ahead and book a call with me, and we'll see if you qualify to be one of the investors on the deal with us. You can book that at www.callwithlori.com. And if you know of a deal like this, or you want to play big, or you want to leave a legacy, we'd like you to reach out to us. You can request an application from Jeff at sjrei.org. And what we can do is see if you qualify to be a student like Selja, where we can partner with you, or if you bring us a deal, see if the deal is something that we can, bring to our students. So this is an opportunity for you to participate in the Momentum Boardroom, which is our coaching and mastermind group. With this, you would get 8 hours of one-on-one with me every year where we go through your goals and we figure out what it is you want, just like Selja wanted to come together or bring a project together that allowed the families to live close to each other, and we were able to make that a reality for her. We have accountability calls. We help you with current market strategies that are working to make money, because we know we're just about to change the type of market that we're in. So it's critical to be changing the strategies, and we work with you on that. And then we have 3 annual boardroom meetings where we bring everybody together and we share ideas. We give you some hot seat time, and we ask you to teach something like it's a give in the group. Another benefit of being part of this group is to get early access to deals before they go out to our full database, and access to my black book of contacts, much like Carl. I can make direct introductions to top players in the marketplace. In addition, you'll get discounts to many of our SJREI events. I am going to say don't apply for this if you want me to do it for you, or if you think it's going to be easy. It will be simple, but it's not going to be easy. Don't apply if you're afraid or embarrassed to ask questions, or you can't make a decision, because you have to make a decision in this business. And don't apply if you're comfortable with your life right now. But I would suggest that you consider it, and it might be a fit for you if you recognize that right now is the time that millions are going to be made. There are so many opportunities out there, and now's the time to take action. If you are the type of person that will trust a coach and a mentor and take action, then this might be a fit for you. And if you know you missed your chance in 2008 and thought you'd never get another chance, this is the time to act. So the last thing I want to put out there is, if you want to be an example to your children or to others that you're going to follow your passion and actually take action, this might be for you. So again, you can request an application for the Momentum Boardroom from Jeff. Just email him, let him know that you're interested, and we'll see if it's a fit for you. So what I'd like to do next is turn this over to Liz, and she's going to give you a market update. So let me stop sharing here. Liz, are you ready to do the market update?
I'm ready. Let me just bring it up here. Can you see it?
It's coming up. Perfect.
Okay, this is the California housing market update as of July 30th, which is updated monthly. So I'm going to go through this real quick with you. Shouldn't take long. My computer's a little slow. Okay, here we go. Okay, so the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is there's significant progress in the market and the economy. There's lots of demand from home buyers, and realtors are feeling optimistic. The bad is there's a huge lack of supply impeding the recovery, and realtors reporting weaker weeks, and closed sales are starting to dip. The ugly is the key indicators are moving in the wrong direction, and forward-looking market indicators are flagging, and level of uncertainty and downside risk is rising. So looking backward, things look pretty good. So, you know, employment was reopening, boosting jobs and that, but let's see. Let me minimize my screen. There. Okay. So consumer bounce back is, I mean, optimistic. It's back to pre-crisis levels, as you can see here. So consumers are optimistic. And why interest rates matter so much? I mean, interest rates are down. The 30-year fix is down below 3%, like for the first time ever, I think. but you can see what a difference it makes in the monthly payment. From April 2019 to now, the median price home, I mean, it's a huge decrease in your monthly payment. So that's why it's really, even though, you know, the price was lower, because the rate is so much lower, you still have a huge savings in your monthly payment. So you can see here the statistics for the sales. Year to date, these existing home sales were down about 12%. And prices come up a bit, about 2%. And the unsold inventory is about 2.7. And the median days on the market, which is good, is less than, you know, 19 days, less than 20. The sales price, list price ratio, I mean, it's close to 100, so 99.5. So that's, prices are still remaining, and there's a reason for that. So the pending sales, we had the biggest annual increase since 2012 on our pending sales. And the purchase applications continued to outpace 2019. And of course, that's because of the mortgage rates. Last week, so CAR does a poll and they ask realtors, have you had, you know, deals fall through? It looks like it's actually come down to 16%. So, you know, it has come down a bit. So that's a good thing. Let's see. So generally, you know, consumers are feeling more optimistic. So the questions here, will listings will increase. That's up. Sales will increase. They're thinking yes, and prices will increase. So that's higher. So they're very optimistic there. Problem is the lack of supply. So that's what's impeding the recovery. So you can see the active listings plunged more than 40% year over year. So you can see that here, that's huge. That's the problem. So the new listings declined for the second week. You see that there? And pending sales up, but rebound a lot slower. So closed sales fall for the first time since May, so we're down lower here. And there's fewer listing appointments last week, so things are really starting to slow down. So new escrows are down from early July. And there's fewer transactions that closed last week. You can see the pattern there. So there is more uncertainty and lots of healing left to do in this economy. And you know, obviously we have this huge issue with COVID. I mean, over 8,700 deaths, I mean, in California, which is absolutely horrible. And our increase in positive cases. So that's basically what's, you know, I mean, really hurting the economy. The U.S. economy contracted the sharpest rate on record. The GDP is down 32%, 32.9. So that is also huge. Employment still down 15 million from pre-COVID period. So that's also a big factor in the economy. And then the jobless claims, they're up second week in a row. And they are still rising. So the consumer sentiment takes a step back in July, just from, you know, the increase in COVID and everything still, you know, the unexpected spikes in that and what's going on there. So more transactions are falling out of escrow. It's increased here. And so basically, the road to recovery is, I mean, there's bumps ahead, there's a lot of curves ahead, and we still have a challenge ahead of us. So that's kind of what's been going on in the housing market. If you guys want more detailed information as far as statistics and that, I would love to send that to you. Just let me know if you need that, and I can send that over to you. Okay.
So Liz, do you want them to just send an email to you, or how would you like to?
However, email, I mean, just in the chat box here, you can just let me know you need it and we can get it to you. It's fine.
Perfect. So Jeff, maybe you could put Liz's email in there and they can just email her direct. Thank you. Okay, so we are going to go ahead into our speaker tonight. Before we do that, I want you to know that for being here with SJREI, you guys have the opportunity to get a free book that Clint wrote about asset protection. You simply need to go to reapbook.com and enter the promo code SJREI. There's no cost, just go ahead and enter that. This is special for you guys who showed up tonight. And so again, if you go to the www.reapbook.com and enter SJREI, you can put your information in order to get that book. And that's a great gift, and I'm very thankful that they're offering that for you. So tonight, we have a very special guest. Carl's been here in San Jose before. He's a Division I player and business owner, former business owner, and he brings that knowledge that he has to you as the individuals trying to run business. He invests, he's cryptocurrency, he's an attorney. He understands all the different legs of the stool that are necessary to be successful. And so his main passion is to educate and make sure that you get to keep what you've earned, what you've built, protect it with asset protection. And one of the things that he and Anderson are all about is making sure that you as an entrepreneur not only get the legal advice, but understand why, not only get the tax and financial advice, but understand why, so that you can speak the same language when you're talking to your advisors and understand the direction that they're taking you. One of the quotes that they shared with me is, simply put, law school is the most expensive foreign language class that you can take. And thankfully, Carl took it and you don't have to. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to welcome Carl.
Thank you very much for having me as we're doing the tech switch over here. Let's see if I can work this here. Good, Zoom. Start broadcast. We're on our way. So.
Awesome.
And let me just switch over to my presentation here. Yeah, well, thank you all for having me. Like Lori mentioned, I have been in San Jose and chatted with the group before, so I recognize a couple of the names on here. For those of you I haven't met before, it's nice to meet you online. Hopefully someday we'll get a chance to meet back in person again. I'm sure it will be coming soon. I think I cheered at the wrong part when Lori was saying 2020 is almost over. I'm not necessarily excited the year's over because there's lots of other things I have left to accomplish. But this one may be good to put in the record books and sort of move on from. So, yeah, as Lori said, I'm an attorney. I work for a company called Anderson Business Advisors. We've been in business for over 20 years. The book you're going to get when you go online, you will get that book, and you'll also get a free strategy session as well with one of our advisors. So we can take a look at your specific setup and offer suggestions to you. Everybody's going to do things a little bit different. So we want to make sure that we're tailoring that structure or those suggestions for what you're doing. Even if you're in the same line of business, you may be looking at different values of properties, which can change the asset structure, especially in California, given all the friendly tax laws that California likes to pass on to its residents. So there's different ways you can structure your business depending on what you're doing, whether maybe you're investing in projects and just getting a simple rate of return, whether you're driving the process and doing, say, a flip, or if you have an existing rental portfolio. All of these things need to be planned around, and everybody's got a slightly different, a slightly different skew on how they do things. Just as a sort of a broad introduction as well, we not only, so real estate investing is where we have the most clients across the nation. So I would certainly say that's our main focus, but we also work with stock traders and small business owners from all over the country as well. So I know there's a lot of times when it comes to real estate investing, it's not just, most people just aren't just doing real estate, which sounds sort of funny to say, saying just real estate, because it can take up, about four full-time jobs just to do real estate. But I know a lot of you are doing different things out there. So just as a commitment to all of you this evening as well, the group or the items we're going to talk about, they're very surface level. So with about an hour or so to chat with you, we of course cannot cover everything: tax, asset, estate planning, or other, basically get into the granular details of some of these things. We really need you to come to, even if it's one of our online classes, so we can delve a little deeper in there. But I certainly think it's a great opportunity to at least give you some surface knowledge on what you need to be looking for, as well as what you should be considering if you're going to go out or planning to set up an LLC. There's lots of different things that go into it. And I say set up an LLC because most people will just tell you, well, just set up an LLC. It's better to have something than nothing. Yeah, sort of. If you're not maintaining it though, or not maintaining the veil of that LLC, it's not going to be worth much to you. So we want to make sure you're doing things the right way. So first and foremost, even though I'm an attorney, one of the first things I do, or one of the most important things I do, is I am an educator. I've educated folks all over the country. So before we hit the lockdown like everybody else, I was probably on more than, 200 flights a year, speaking to different groups in different states. We have clients in all 50 states. We're a registered agent in all 50 states. So it's a great, Lori's 100% correct that it is a great there will be some great opportunities out there. Yes, it is unfortunate we're going through a tough time. People are going through a tough time. But there certainly will be millionaires and potential, and I would say probably even a few billionaires made during this time, because there will be lots of opportunity out there. So we want you to be in a position where you can take advantage of those opportunities, and to whatever extent you're willing or able to, because they will come. So let's see here. My slide is a little bit frozen here. Let's try this again. There we go. All right, so what do we do at Anderson?
Hold on, Carl, I think could you reshare the slide again, please? Reshare your.
I'm still seeing it. Did it go off for everybody else? Because
I see it.
I see it too.
Okay.
Oh, you see it? Okay.
Jeff, are you causing my technical difficulties? No,
yes, I am.
That's okay.
I hit a button. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Ruined your flow.
No, it's no problem. So Anderson Business Advisors, like I said, what we do is first and foremost, we're an education company, but an education company built up of professionals. We have over 200 employees at this point and have maintained them through the COVID-19 area. But we at our most basic, we teach. We believe in educating our clients. So while we're advising you, we're able to speak the same language. It's incredibly important. And that quote's from me that law school was the most expensive foreign language course I've ever taken. It really, I mean, realistically, a lot of the legalese you see is overly complex. I don't know if it's just something that's built into most attorneys that they like to make things more complex. So I guess maybe they can charge you more. But once you really start to break down the language and break down the pieces of your contracts and other items, they can actually be relatively straightforward. But we found it invaluable to be able to provide ongoing service to our clients for a very reasonable price. So something unique about Anderson Advisors is we don't charge an hourly rate. So normally when our clients want to speak with us, they just pick up the phone or schedule a time, and we're happy to hop on the phone with them. And normally, or not normally, but for our clients who are what we refer to as platinum clients, which is the informational side of what we do, it's $35 a month. So if you wanted to have weekly phone calls with me, it would still only cost you $35 a month. So there's a great route there. And the way I explain it, because everybody always asks, well, how do you afford to be able to do that service at $35 a month when, you know, my local attorney may be charging me, you know, $350 an hour, or your local area could be substantially higher than that. It's quite frankly because we have so many clients that maintain the service. So it's a membership type program. And it works on the preventative medicine side versus the emergency room side for any doctors we may have on the call. So we understand also the annoyance of being bounced between legal and tax professionals. As real estate investors ourselves, we've dealt with that issue where the attorney tells you need an LLC and you say, okay. And then you go to your CPA and they may tell you, well, you need an S corporation. Okay. But now there's at some impasse. Well, there's some different ways you can combine that information. The way we've done it is we hire tax and legal professionals, so attorneys, CPAs, and we come up with strategies together so you get the best of both worlds, being sort of bounced back instead of being bounced back and forth. So most of our clients have really appreciated and really enjoy that it's sort of a one-stop shop where you can come in and both get legal asset protection structuring, as well as with an eye on what is the best for me from a tax perspective. So that working together has been really important for our clients, especially over the past, several years, certainly. But it's one thing that gets missed, especially by a lot of folks who are starting out in real estate, or especially with people who are making high W-2 income. They just, a lot of times from the clients I deal with, they sort of just feel like it just is what it is. It's hopeless. So I'll just pay all the taxes I have to. And it'll just be sort of an endless pit until I get tired and leave the state I'm in. So you don't have to do that. There are the real value when it comes to tax prep actually comes in the planning. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that coming up. Just so you know, markets we serve, we have clients, like I mentioned, from all over the country in all 50 states. We help with real estate deals in all 50 states, giving general advice in all 50 states. The nice thing about real estate, there are some local details that are different from place to place, or some state details that are different from place to place. But really, once you get the pattern down and you get the right market, you've got a pretty good system in place that you can do real estate deals across the country. So it's been my experience, especially working with folks who may have just started in real estate and are now sort of growing their base or looking in other places to invest. Say if you're a California resident looking to invest outside of California, it's invaluable to have somebody who can advise you on maybe some state issues you may not be aware of, because it's different from your local state. And I will tell you this much, California is very different from the other 49 states in a lot of different ways, but the same concepts still apply. You still need to know what's going on with your purchase and sales agreement. You need to know how to get a deal locked up. You need to know how to close. You need to work with a good title company. Should be working with a good realtor. All those things sort of say the same, but those little other details can reach out and grab you if you don't know what you're doing out there. So great to work with folks who know what's going on out there in those different places and the different tools that may be necessary in those places. One of the most common things I come across as an attorney dealing with my clients tends to be working with them in regards to what are we looking at when we start looking at how to close a property, or if I'm using financing. Financing is sort of your first hurdle in the very beginning and can change the way your entity is set up or structured. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more as well. But let me just quickly tell you just a little bit more about myself. Lori did a great job introducing me. As I mentioned probably 2 or 3 times already, I am an attorney. I became an attorney because I got tired of paying crappy attorneys. So pardon my language if that's offensive to anybody, but I became an attorney because I got tired of it. I grew up in Central Texas, went to college at University of Colorado, played a little football there, and then I got into the business world. So 2007, when I graduated from University of Colorado. So the market was doing great, right? And while all of my friends were moving home, I did not want that to be an option. So I found businesses that were flourishing and decided to work in them. So I've had a few different, well, those were mostly jobs. Being attorney is really my first real career, I would say. But I actually got into the bar and nightclub business during the height of the recession back in 07, 08. So I ran bars and nightclubs, and throughout that time, of course, there was some liability events. And actually the last time that the company I was running and I individually got sued, I said, you know what? I'm tired of dealing with this. These attorneys are terrible and they get paid whether they win or lose. So what a great racket to be in, that you can be okay or not even very good at your job, paid by an insurance company, and you still get paid whether you win or lose. Because really, at the end of the day, it's the client who's winning or losing, not the attorney. The attorney always wins. So I actually went to law school in North Texas, so in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And I thought I was going to be one of the guys who was going to be knocking on your door, trying to take all of your stuff. However, during that period of time, I did read an article by the gentleman that you're going to get the free book for, Clint Coons, talking about a couple of clients he dealt with that both of them, it was father and a son, they had a nightclub that they owned together. Somebody was injured at the nightclub. The father and the son both got sued. Son walked away for insurance limits. The father did not. The sum of the story is that the son had his entities appropriately structured so that the attorney who was pursuing him could not see the other assets he owned, and the father did not. They were all in his individual name. And I said, hey, you know what? That sounds like a pretty interesting deal there, or a pretty interesting thing I should look into, because this may sort of shock some of you, or you may know it already. But in law school, they don't teach you entity structuring. They teach you what a business entity is. You may be able to take a business class on M&A, mergers and acquisitions, things like that. But as far as just protecting your assets and how to structure these things, at least at the tier 1 law school I went to, there was not that opportunity. So I thought, great, what an awesome way to learn from, the best in the business. And so I reached out. I guess it's my entrepreneurial spirit that I reached out and tried to get in touch with Clint, eventually got connected. And after several interviews and a in-person flight to Las Vegas for an interview, we decided to move forward. So I actually only planned to be with Anderson for a couple of years. Figured I'd take everything they taught and then go do my own thing. It didn't turn out that way. It turned out it was a great company. I really like the partners of Anderson. That would be Clint Coons, the gentleman who wrote the book you're going to get for free if you go to that website and sign up for the free book in the strategy session. Michael Bowman, who's been a great mentor to me and an avid businessman himself, and as well as Toby Mathis, who runs basically our entire tax section. So they make a great combination, and I've really felt found a home here with Anderson. So I've really enjoyed getting to know the company as well. But I always figure might as well be transparent. We can talk about, my initial plans going in as an investor, because I never pictured myself after law school working for somebody. But I do, because they give me the flexibility to continue on with my investments and grow with my knowledge as well. A little bit of a funny story. as a kiddo, I always say my first business was that my friends and I used to go to my buddy's dad had a big garden in his backyard in Central Texas. And so my first business was stealing his vegetables and selling them on the side of the road. So I don't know if any of you have experienced that same type of business. The margins were great, right? I mean, it was 100% profit until the authorities stepped in. So that's when I first learned about what taxation was, when his dad found out we were taking all of his vegetables and selling them. So the next one, or one of the other, and I would say the first sale of a business I did was a very small sale, but I did the purchase and the sale on actually a cocktail napkin in college. I wouldn't suggest doing that. Luckily, no adverse legal effects came from that, but it was a very small technology thing I was working on. So you learn things. What I'm getting at is you learn things along the way. One of the most valuable learning experiences, like I said, is when I was running bars and nightclubs, had over 100 employees on any given night, working with customers, working with intoxicated customers, was sort of an interesting experience, but you get to see sort of the other side of that once you've been sued. I hope nobody out here, by the way, I hope none of you ever get sued. But realistically, the statistics say that most investors and most investors will be sued 5 times during the course of their investing career. Maybe it'll be something very small. Maybe, a broken lease, or you didn't return the deposit in time, or something very small like this. The problem is you just don't know. You don't know if it's going to be, maybe you've got somebody out repairing a house, they hit a high tension wire and are electrocuted. It's happened. It's actually happened to clients. I could tell you 100 horror stories, but most of us have heard them. So I'm not going to spend the evening scaring you. What I am going to do, though, is say you need to be prepared to handle that, though, if it happens. It's one of those things people always think as well. Insurance is going to cover me. You should read your insurance policy. Your insurance policy is about 1 page of coverage and about 30 pages of what's not covered. So we want to make sure that you understand the field you're playing on. And realistically, every structure I set up and anybody that at Anderson sets up is to avoid even stepping on that field. Really, the best way to win a lawsuit is to not be involved in one. So if we can remove that risk or substantially remove that risk, you're in a much better position than if you just went in with everything in your individual name, because what you're doing is you're removing that pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. So my specialty is that I work with small business owners and real estate investors to help them keep more of what they earn from a tax perspective and limit that liability should the worst case scenario occur. So some basics of asset protection is what we're going to go over this evening. There's lots of different nooks and crannies and individual changes, and any of you who've dealt with attorneys before know that any small change of fact can actually drastically change the scenario. But I want to make sure we touch on some of the basics. By the way, I know Jeff's maintaining the chat here, so I do plan to have a Q&A session at the end, but you're more than welcome to ask questions along the way, but they'll probably be answered at the end. Just want to make sure everybody's aware of the rules. So most real estate investors I deal with, one of the first things they come in, depending on their experience up to this point, a lot of them ask, how do I limit my liability? What even tools are available to me out there? You can Google anything you want and find any answer you want if you click far enough down the O's of the Google. So what tools are there for you? Which ones are appropriate for you? What are some common factors in a good asset protection structure? And by the way, there is Henry Ford, I think, was famous for saying, there's a butt for every seat. Same thing when it comes to asset protection. There is a level to which everybody is comfortable with in their own individual investing portfolios. I have clients who refuse to almost pay another additional cent in any tax ever. Okay. There's a way to work with that, but it's important to know that as well, is that when you're not paying taxes or you're not showing taxable income on your personal return, you're going to be substantially less lendable. So we need to take into consideration as well the business and the planning aspect of what you're trying to do. Now, the nice part is with use of certain entities, you can turn that income on and off depending on what you're doing, but it takes that planning and that consulting side to understand when those pieces are important to deal with. So we want to address some of those issues as well. So first big concept of the evening, business entities keep your business and personal assets separate. Think about it as a bulletproof box. When I set up a business entity, what I'm really doing is I am setting up an entity that says, okay, this is something that's separate from me. And not only is that single entity separate from my personal assets, but it's separate from my other investments as well that are in individual entities. So when I talk about a bulletproof box, if you'll just envision the box here, or actually, you know what, I could probably even draw it on the slide for us. So if I have my box here, and this box will be an LLC or a corp, if somebody, I'm going to try to do my best here, drawing a gun on the fly. If somebody shoots at that box and that box is bulletproof, does the bullet get in? No. Now let's look at it from the other side, and we'll try to draw another gun. That's pretty close. Now if they shoot the bullet from the inside, does the bullet get out? No, the bullet doesn't get out. Same concept, but except from the attorney's point of view, what we're looking at is the concept of what we call inside and outside liability. Inside liability is something that happens in the box. So say if I have a piece of property that I own inside of that LLC and something happens on that property, my liability ends at the edges of this box. Okay, the one that people don't tend to think about, but is actually probably more common, especially with professionals like doctors, is the outside liability. So if I don't have, say this is a house, inside of this box, and say I get into a car accident, this is at risk if I don't have the box. Let's see if I can. If the house is just sitting out here, I'm right here, I own this directly. Now, if I get in a car accident, this is mine. So it can go away as well. When I put it in a box, this arrow that you see right here, I know it's kind of hard to see, but this arrow stops at the edge of that box. That's your concept of outside liability. So when we create a business entity, what we're saying is, I'm creating a liability box. So when I have that liability box, nothing comes in, nothing goes out from a liability perspective. From a cash perspective, the money can move freely. But from a liability perspective, I'm limiting it to the box. So when I protect my other assets, a lot of times I'll have multiple boxes, okay? Because I want to protect this property from this property from this property, and I also want to protect it from me. Because it's not only me, it's my family. If my, you know, God forbid, if my wife were to get into a car accident, or if I don't have kids right now, but if I had kids and they got in a car accident, all of this could be potentially available if it's not in an LLC. By the way, same thing applies for, well, let's just call them unfortunate events like bankruptcy. So if I have a business entities and businesses, if I declare bankruptcy, I can declare personal bankruptcy if I had to, or I could declare business bankruptcy. So you start to see how this separation can kind of work together in order to provide some additional protections and additional creditor protections even as well. So we want to make sure we're using these pieces in the appropriate way. Now, let me erase some of this here. From a very basic standpoint, there are two, let's call it two different types of entities that are very common within tax and asset protection. Your first one is going to be, actually we'll just advance the slide here. Oh, come on. So you have your LLC and your corporation, okay? Differences we can talk about. So in an LLC, they both function as boxes, remember? So let's talk about the LLC first. So LLC, the owner is referred to as the member. Okay, the one that's directing what's going on within that LLC is referred to as the manager. So I'm just going to list it as director / officer. Okay, it'll make sense in a moment. Now, what a lot of folks don't know or don't understand is the way you set up these entities. They have a couple of different ways you can utilize that member and manager. Number one is the member. You can set up the LLC as member managed or manager managed. Member managed means that all members have some management duties within the LLC. Manager managed means it doesn't necessarily have to be a member or an owner that's managing the LLC. For most rental properties, I usually suggest the LLC is set up as member managed because I usually have another LLC sitting behind it as the owner. So the effect of doing that as member managed is that this LLC down here shows on the Secretary of State website this LLC up here. And if I use a state which allows me to offer anonymity or file entities anonymously without showing the owner of that, then that's where the information stops for any prying eyes. Now, the state we use most commonly is going to be Wyoming. Wyoming and Nevada have almost identical asset protection laws in place. And as other states have gotten weaker on their asset protection structures or asset protection laws, Wyoming's actually gotten stronger. The reason we tend to use Wyoming is it's because it's more cost effective for our clients at this point, where it may cost $850, $900 to maintain a Nevada entity. In Wyoming, it's about $50 a year to renew that entity. So we use those things to our advantage when we're creating an asset protection plan. So your most, like I said, your most basic or your first description here of the types of entities or tools at your disposal is your LLC. It is the most universal entity. It is a blend between partnership, limited partnerships, and corporations, and that's why they were brought to fruition in the 70s. But the LLCs are a very flexible entity, and they're recognized in all 50 states. One thing bears to mention is that LLCs are created by state law. Their taxation is decided by federal law. So normally when you set up an LLC, if you set it up as a single member LLC, if you don't elect a different type of taxation, the default is sole proprietor, or what we refer to as a disregarded entity. So all of the income will flow down onto your personal return. So if you're doing an active business, all of that income would flow onto your Schedule C. If you're doing a passive business, it would flow onto your Schedule E. You also have the ability, though, if it's a multiple, so say if there's additional members in the LLC, you can choose, the default would be partnership taxation. So one member, sole proprietor taxation, 2 members, default would be partnership taxation. Now, whether you're a single member LLC or a multiple member LLC, you also have the ability to choose if you want to be taxed as a corporation. So I can actually have an LLC that is taxed as an S corporation or a C corporation as well, which is pretty neat in my opinion, because you get all the benefits of being a corporation from the federal tax standpoint, but you lose a couple of the maintenance requirements that come along with a corporation. Now, a lot of attorneys out there will tell you, oh, well, you just should have an LLC because it's so much easier to run. Really, the differentiation is 2 meetings a year between an LLC and a corporation. And quite frankly, even if you have an LLC that's taxed as a corporation, you should still be having substantially more than just 2 meetings a year anyways to maintain your corporate veil. And corporate veil in this aspect doesn't just apply to a corporation, it will actually apply to your LLC as a business entity as well. All right, so that's your sort of LLC, very bare minimum basics on some of the things you can do with them. Let's look at the corporation now. So a corporation will have, so we can look at a corporation sort of like a triangle here. It's got 3 levels. At your most basic level, your owner is the shareholder. Middle level is your director. And top level is your officers, okay? Shareholders elect directors, directors hire officers, okay? Now, some of you may be asking, okay, so if I can set up an LLC taxed as a corporation, then what is the difference between a corporation and an LLC taxed as a corporation? Reasonable question, right? So the difference really is that the corporation taxed, or an LLC taxed as a corporation, doesn't or isn't allowed to take what is called 1244 stock loss. The IRS provision that refers to the stock loss specifically refers to stock. Corporations have stock, LLCs actually have membership units. So it's a technical difference, but it can be important to understand or help choose what the appropriate entity is. Normally, I'll look at a traditional corporation if you have, say you're starting in a new line of business and you're trying to capture things like taking classes or mentorships or things like that that may have an expense on the front end if you weren't already in that line of business. Through a traditional C corporation, I can capture that expense as a startup expense, and as my business starts to make money, it can reimburse me for that expenditure on the front end, and that reimbursement comes out at 0% tax. Whether you're in California, Texas, New York, it's 0% out as a reimbursement. So it can be very valuable there. The other benefit is if, say, life circumstances change and you want to shut down your business, but you have put in substantial equity, that 1244 stock loss, should you choose to close down that corporation, allows you to take that loss of equity on your personal return. So it's really a hedge against the unpredictable. So for most people who may just be starting in the business or don't have an existing line of business in real estate, a lot of times you will see, especially if you're meeting with me, I will suggest starting with a traditional corporation. The corporation, if you're saying, where do I start? I sort of need to start with one entity. In most cases, I'm going to tell you to start with your corporation because it provides you the most tax flexibility and the ability to sort of shift income from yourself to a business, cover different types of expenses like medical care reimbursements. There's an accountable plan under IRS Section 105B that allows me to pay for cell phone, internet, computer. I can do things in my corporation like bonus depreciation, even accelerated depreciation when you're looking at different assets. So you have the ability, and I like the corporation to start out with because it gives you that tax flexibility. So those are your 2 basic starting points of what you build off of when you're considering putting together an asset protection structure. Now, that being said, an LLC, let's just call it a disregarded LLC, has its place in your structure, but a corporation and, say, a Wyoming LLC are normally what I refer to as the investing hubs in your business entity structure. Your Wyoming LLC provides you a layer of anonymity and asset protection because of the laws, as well as the different ways to file in Wyoming to retain that anonymity. It's more that connects to other disregarded LLCs that hold your passive assets or your mailbox money. So say if you were to invest in a syndication deal, or if you were going to have rental properties, I would run those through disregarded entities through the Wyoming company, because really passive income outside of using retirement plans to invest, things like that, tend to be preferred taxation when you're working. Now, most of us know, especially as the real estate investors know, you have to, in most cases, especially if you're starting out, you're going to want to have an active income generating entity as well. This is where your corporation steps in, especially if you're starting out with, say, flips and maybe wholesaling, things like that. Your corporation is what you want to run that income through, because the corporation is best suited to be able to handle that type of income, as well as it prevents being tagged as what's referred to by the IRS as a dealer. You do not want to be classified as a dealer in real estate because so the general idea is it basically hoses you on your passive real estate portfolio if you're considered a dealer of real estate. What being considered dealer of real estate is basically the IRS considers your real estate holdings as inventory, which screws up things like 1031 exchanges, long-term capital gains rates. Seller financing is hugely affected. If you're classified as a dealer and you're seller financing a deal, the income from the sale of the property is taxed at its full rate versus as you receive the income. So if I'm selling, let's call it a $500,000 property, if I'm not a dealer and say somebody put down $100,000 and then they're going to be paying on the note the rest of the, for the next, 10 years, something like that, then I actually recognize that income as I receive it. So I'd recognize the income for the 100,000 and then whatever they're going to pay me over the course of the year. If I'm a dealer, that entire 500,000 is taxable day one, even if I've only received 100,000 plus maybe the first month's mortgage payment. So it can really change the look of your entity and tax structure if you're not using the appropriate entities. And the way you get around that is for your active real estate investing, you use that corporation or a disregarded entity owned by that corporation to do that, because they're specifically exempt from the dealer status statutes. So it's when you start talking about how to do these structures and tax, you really start looking at, well, if I'm trying to walk through a minefield, do I need to know where every single mine is, or do I just need to know where the clear path is? And my argument would be, usually you just need to know where the clear path is. I don't need to know where every single mine is in the field. So we try to lead our clients down the clear path so that you don't have to know absolutely everything about every mine in the field. Here we go. All right, so second big concept, trusts. Most of you in California, since I would assume everybody in the San Jose real estate group is probably in California, probably have heard of or are familiar with trust. There's lots of different trusts. So I know with a lot of the clients I work with, a lot of them are in California. So you start talking about things like Delaware statutory trusts or land trusts or even personal property trusts. What I'll say is it belongs to a bigger group in that trusts are solutions to common problems. So if I'm looking at the most common trust, I would say living trust is a solution to your estate going through probate. Okay, probate is terrible in any state, especially if you're outside of the small estate side, which isn't much in California. What I would say is the living trust is one of the only tools that will avoid probate unless you have all non-probate assets, which is pretty unlikely, especially if you're an investor. So a living trust is going to be the best tool for you. A will does not avoid probate, and no estate plan at all does not avoid probate. On average, to put an estate through probate, you're looking at 18 months to get it through probate, as well as usually somewhere between $12,000 and $18,000. And California is even higher. California actually has statutory probate fees of 8% when you combine them. So 8% on your gross estate. So you can do the math on that. It's also a very, how do I say this in a somewhat politically correct way? It's also a very predatory industry within the legal practice, because a lot of times you'll see those advertisements for $100 wills, $200 wills. From the attorney standpoint, it's known as a loss leader. So say I usually charge somewhere around $500 an hour for my drafting time. Not for, if you're working through Anderson, generally where, for your entities, things like that, those are flat rate. But say if you wanted me to, if I was on my own, hung my own shingle, I would charge about $500 an hour for drafting fees. With your will, what I would say is if I'm bringing you in, I charge you $100 to $200. So I'm taking a discount on my original drafting fee, but then I'm doing it because I know I'll be getting, 20,000, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 out of your estate on the back end. I look at that as a little bit predatory because by the time those fees are racked up, you're gone and you can't complain. So I would say you have the option to step outside of that system and really doing that as a living trust. Don't have a ton of time to talk about that this evening, but it is one of the services we offer as well because we've seen the effects of families going through probate, and there's lots of downside to probate. So just to write that one there for you. Land trust. Land trust falls in the same family as a living trust. Land trust, if we're looking at trust in the way they solve issues, land trusts are used to solve the issue of transfer tax. They can also be used to hold properties in states that may charge, I don't know, this may ring a bell, substantial franchise fees for LLCs and business entities. So the land trust is a valuable tool in that battle. I also mentioned Delaware statutory trust. Anderson doesn't do Delaware statutory trust. I don't particularly care for them. I think there's a lot of hype around them, but I don't think they function exactly the way people think they do. So the Delaware statutory trust, at the end of the day, since California doesn't recognize asset protection trusts, functions almost identically to a land trust, except they're usually, 5-6 times as expensive, and really rely on that out-of-state trustee to maintain that trust. So you may actually end up paying more to maintain the trustee out of state than you would have to just pay the California franchise tax. So if you're looking for a solution to pay less in franchise tax, say for your passive portfolio, we found the land trust works really well, and it's usually tied to a out-of-state entity. But it would take a more in-depth and specific discussion because there's lots of questions surrounding it, and there's some pieces that you have to accept to make sure it functions within your business structure. Personal property trust. So personal property trusts are very interesting. What do they solve, or what problem do they solve? The personal property trust can solve things like, well, say if I directly own an LLC if I'm a California resident and I directly own an LLC, maybe that causes me some problems from a tax perspective. But what if I own a personal property trust, and that personal property trust then owns the LLC? It provides some additional planning opportunities. So I do use them quite a bit with California clients, as well as I tend to use them as well when I start structuring for folks who may have stock portfolios or stock investments they want to have protected and out of their individual name. By the way, those of you who may have stock as well, stock is something that an attorney looks at and says, ooh, same as cash. They don't care about your basis in it. All they want to do is liquidate the account. So you really want your stock investments out of your individual name as well. One other thing about California that I like to mention is a lot of you may be considering investing through your retirement plans. So if you have IRAs, Roth, traditional IRA, Roth IRA, really from the real estate investing side, your best option is going to be a solo 401k, and you can set it up off of your corporation. Really because California doesn't protect your IRA accounts very much. So the 401k is an ERISA, or a federal protected account. So you can step up in that area. And we also advise in that area if you're trying to invest with your retirement accounts. But it's an interesting option there as well. So to my final big concept of the evening, and I think we've scratched a lot of surfaces here. So I'm hoping we'll get some good questions here in the Q&A. But tax and business planning can make a world of difference, especially when you're just starting out. There is a business entity that everybody sort of shakes their head at and tries to understand, or tries to shut down with a nod of the head. and it's a C corporation. Okay, it's not appropriate for everybody. A different entity may be appropriate for what you're doing, where you're at in your investing career, but the C corporation does offer a lot of value. So most common critique is going to be that C corporation has double taxation. When you ask people, what does that mean? Most people don't understand those levels of taxation. What it means is, if your corporation is profitable, your corporation will pay a flat 21% tax on its income. Okay. Now, any good tax planner, any good attorney who deals with any sort of tax will tell you, even a little bit of planning can get that taxable income to zero or show a loss on the books. So a lot of times that first level may not even be applicable, especially if you're starting out. For most clients, you're looking at potentially somewhere in the 3-year range before you have to start really doing some extensive planning to get that corporate taxation very low. Now, the second level of that potential double taxation would be as if you paid yourself a salary or a dividend out of your corporation. Now, some things to discuss. When your corporation pays an employee a salary, that's actually a deduction to the corporation. So that's almost a wash when a corporation pays out. But yes, you would be paying tax on your individual compensation that comes out of there. Okay. Now, if I'm paying myself out of my corporation with a dividend, first of all, dividends are taxed at long-term capital gains rates. So you're looking at 0, 15, or 20%. A lot of you could be even in the 0% range, which, then you just have the flat 21% at the corporate level, because dividends aren't deductible to the corporation. But there's lots of different ways to get money out of it. Most people are getting their money out of their corporation by actually booking lots of reimbursements. And if you remember from when I started talking at the beginning of the presentation, reimbursements are awesome because they come out at 0% tax. I can give you, or I'll give you a suggestion on where you could probably get at least $14,000 out of your corporation every single year as a non-taxable, it's not technically a reimbursement, but a non-taxable income to you as an individual, and your corporation will take a deduction for it. It's under IRC, so Internal Revenue Code Section 280A. You as an individual can rent your personal residence to your corporation up to 14 days a year. Your corporation will pay you reasonable value to rent that property, and you get that by checking with 3 hotels for similar space, time, and amenities. So if I'm holding an all-day meeting, I'm going to have refreshments, I'm going to have an AV package, I'm going to have internet. So what do you think a hotel would charge you for those type of services for, say, on a daily basis? I can tell you, as somebody who's run large group seminars and even small group seminars at hotels, $1,000, especially given the area most of you folks are in, is probably very low on that spectrum. So that, and the IRS says in that code provision that income to you is not reportable as income to you on your individual tax return, and the corporation can deduct it. Same thing like so during this national state of emergency for coronavirus, you actually for the clients we work with, we gave them information as well on Internal Revenue Code Section 139, which is disaster relief payments. Your corporation could actually be reimbursing you right now for groceries, your personal residence, mortgage payment, things like that, at 0% tax. Okay. So it's really about understanding who you're working with and in the area of where you need to plan, where the pain points are for real estate investors and individuals on how to take advantage of those different code provisions. And especially with y'all being California residents, incredibly important to do tax planning. When we start talking, we talked a little bit about the wrong taxation. You may be using the wrong entity for that taxation. Like I said, C corporations get a knock, but realistically as well, if I'm trying to be more lendable it looks better to pay myself a salary out of my C corporation than it would to pay a salary out of my S corporation. Most your CPAs won't tell you that because maybe they don't know. Maybe they're not doing the same type of business you're doing. But when you take a salary out of your S corporation, yeah, it's taxed the same. The salary is taxed the same. But what the difference is when dealing with lenders is the lender is seeing the K1 from the S corporation. If I'm paying myself a salary out of my C corporation, all that shows up is the W-2. The K1 is what screws the deal up, because the lender will then start asking questions about your business. And if your S corporation just started, or you're working to get the taxable income as low as level, or your salary is low and it doesn't look like it's doing much, you can have a ton of issues because they'll look at your S corporation, look like your S corporation is struggling or dying, and all of a sudden you don't look so lendable. Through the C corporation, it just looks like a company's paying you. So it just ticks you up on your income. And if you own and control that corporation, you control the amount of income that's coming out of it. So like I said, the C corporation is really cool because you can actually turn that faucet off of the income hitting your personal return. On an S corporation, it is always going to be flowing through. It's a flow through entity, and you're required to take a reasonable salary out of it if you have active income rolling through it. So I don't have a problem with an S corporation. I have a lot of clients that have both a C and S corporation because it makes sense for their business because they're providing services, but it's something to understand and work within people's different structures and different investing goals. So we need to look at that stuff. Lack of planning. I'm going to keep this one short. Tax prep, you get very little value out of. Tax planning is where you see the value, and it happens throughout the year. So if I just go into a chain preparer to prepare my business return, all I'm saying is, here's this box of receipts, fill in the boxes on the return, okay? Now, any of you who are using chain preparers, I don't know which ones you are. Usually if I was in person, I'd ask you to raise your hand. However, any of you using chain preparers, the IRS actually audited the chain preparers for accuracy on what they did with business returns. So your chain preparers, they got 0% accuracy. Mom and pop shops did a little bit better at 3%. So the correlation is you want to work with people who know what you do so that you can get, like I said, avoid the mines in the minefield, as well as take advantage of a lot of the things that, unless you work in this area every single day, you don't know about or may not be familiar with or not comfortable using. There's a lot of stuff there, especially even if there's some of you looking for, or those of you who do Airbnb, there are lots of little nooks and crannies in Airbnb. And as one of the folks who put together the Airbnb module for Anderson Business Advisors, I can tell you it is wrought with peril. I had a client who had well over, I think she had $16 million worth of Airbnb properties. She hired not only 2, but 3 CPAs to advise her. And none of them knew that income from Airbnb, if the average length of stay is 7 days or less than 7, if it's 7 days or less, is active income. And then she got audited, and it was not a fun process for her. I can tell you where it's actually found. I got one of those, I guess, types of memories where I can point it out. It's in the what is it? IRS publication 925 is where that information came out. So you want to do planning to make sure you're planning for the sort of income you're going to generate, because you will generate income through real estate as long as you're following the rules that you're taught and you keep your wits about you. So we talked about the lendability, taxation, and lack of planning. So it's important to balance all of those even within your tax and business issues. So why do laymen make mistakes? So I always feel like layman's sort of a mean word to call people just because they don't have, a few letters behind their name. But why do laymen make mistakes? Most times it's because they're listening to their friends or somebody who's doubting their investing opportunity. The internet there's so many. I'll tell you this much. It took me 7 years and probably close to almost $500,000 for the education I have. And I can tell you by going through internet article after internet article, there's a lot of crappy information out there. So we want to make sure you're using the correct professionals who also do what you do and deal with what you deal with to make sure that you're getting set up with the right information. Why do professionals make mistakes? So if you're dealing with a CPA or an attorney, what if you're hearing something different from me than what they did? I'll tell you this much: in my days speaking with and talking with other professionals, a lot of times if they're just not aware of it, they're not, the saying goes, if they're not up on it, they're down on it. Tends to be true. If they're not aware of it, haven't used it, they're very skeptical, and especially if you're using folks who've been doing it for a long time, if they haven't kept up on a lot of the changes that are constantly going on, they may just be comfortable telling you one thing. Most times I would say, I can tell the difference when a client comes to me and they've been set up by a CPA or an attorney. Usually if I see a CPA, I see lots of partnerships within their business, or taxes partnerships, some corporations, because it usually generates additional returns. If I see an attorney, a lot of times what I'll see is a couple of LLCs, but their tax is maybe disregarded. Or if they have a CPA friend, there may be an S Corp in there somewhere. So it's realistically, if folks aren't up on it or current with the information, a lot of times they don't want to see new things because it hurts what they understand about their profession. So I would say that's probably most common where professionals make mistakes. I don't think anybody, I don't know of any professional, or wouldn't say of a professional, that they would intentionally hurt a client. I just haven't seen that, or luckily not experienced it, because it would be a sickening piece of the puzzle. So the right mix, we've talked about this. We need to look at the tax, liability, lendability, and then overall, if you look at the sort of blue box that's surrounding these circles, I would say that's where your estate plan takes place. Your estate plan is sort of that piece of the puzzle that brings everything together. So the blue box to me would be the estate plan. So we got to find the right mix for you, what you're doing, what your goals are, what you accomplish. Just so you know as well, some of you may or may not be familiar with Anderson. We have over 40,000 clients in all 50 states. So we're not, we take a lot of pride in dealing and helping our clients and working with them and being accessible to them. But we've been around for a long time, and we reach a lot of corners of the United States for sure. So we're not nothing against startups, but we're not a startup company. We have a proven track record, and most of our clients will give us a resounding review on what we can do, even though our business is growing exponentially year after year, end over end. Even through these times in COVID, our company has been growing even faster now because we can reach more people over the internet, when we were more focused on actually meeting people in person. So it's going to be an interesting end of 2020 and into 2021 as well. So our process is easy. I just want to sort of break out the last few pieces here before I wrap up. First place is education. We're giving you a very brief primer on this education this evening. I'm going to try not to go over my time because I know it's getting late for everybody. I'm in Vegas, so I'm running on the same timeline y'all are. Your blueprint with that individual strategy session that you get for free with Clint's free book. That's where we create your blueprint. That's your visual depiction of what you're doing and what we suggest you have in place that fits for you. More education. Even if you go to our first level class, which is called Tax and Asset Protection, it's a full, right now, if you're doing it online, it'll be a 1 day. There's other steps to the process. We've got tax and asset protection. Basically, these are business entities, trusts. Here's how we use them. Here's what you need to know about them. And here's why you should be using them. Number 2 is called structure implementation, which is a class I also teach. It's basically, now that you have your entities, here's what Anderson is doing to help you keep them compliant and maintain that veil. And here's what you need to be doing. Number 3 is tax-wise. Now that you have your entities, you know how to use them. Here's how to squeeze every penny out of them. And then we have all sorts of other classes and educational opportunities along with that as well. We have infinity investing, which talks about passive investing and hitting an infinity number so that you have enough revolving income sources that you don't have to worry about generating active income anymore. We have nonprofit classes. We've got all sorts of offerings as well for our clients because we do put such a value on educating them. So not going to go through a whole lot more. I'm just going to wrap and just say, listen, we talked about some tax planning opportunities, some liability issues we need to be prepared for. And at the end of the day, folks, the deal is this, is we know we got to deal with taxes every single year. Liability is one of those things we have to prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So tax planning, to me, is a more constant need. Liability is something I know I need to prepare for because I have experienced in person when I've done these presentations. Unfortunately, several people have come up to me over the past few years and have told me, I need this more. I wish I would have known about this so I didn't get wiped out. There's nothing more heartbreaking than seeing somebody who's worked their whole life to put something together and then through a lawsuit that objectively was no fault of that person's or their own, got completely wiped out and set back to zero. So we want to make sure we're preparing for that in case it happens, that we have the appropriate armor to defend those types of cases. Trusts, tool used to solve problems. Living trust, like I said, it sort of ties your entire entity structure together. So we want to make sure we're using those. And then the business planning. There is no, just like tax planning, if you don't have a plan going into your investment, you're planning to fail. So I want to thank you all very much for your time. We are going to open up the floor for some Q&A. I do have the website to get Clint's free book and that free strategy session, as well as the promo code at the bottom of my slide too. But I want to thank you folks. I've been watching the participation number and I didn't see a huge drop. So hopefully that means I did a decent job. All right, when we'll open the floor for some questions.
Hey, Carl, I've got some questions here. I'll just start at the top, right?
Sure.
So when CB, we got a question from CB. When you had mentioned preparations from a chain preparer, what did you mean by that?
Chain preparers are like your H&R Block, Liberty Tax, sort of the big names we see advertised all over the TV at tax time.
And from Lori, so in California, what is the best entity to use to flip a house that is bought at $1 million and sold at $1.5 million? When it's an LLC, the state charges tax on gross proceeds. So what would that be, do you think?
Yeah, I would look at your business flow, how many flips you're doing a year, but usually for you, I usually look around 500K before I would use a limited partnership. So I'd probably use a limited partnership in that 1 million purchase range.
I get it. We have a question from Taniko. What would be the best entity for out-of-state investing with a group?
Depends on the business deal. Are you just coming in cash? Are you doing some management? Is it a syndication? Realistically, it would depend on the type of income generated from the deal. Normally, if you're investing out of state, it's usually sort of a passive investment. So normally I would have a Wyoming LLC, or I would also refer to as a holding company, that would invest in that type of deal. Because usually those out-of-state deals, from a passive perspective, are already set up with other entities. So you just be investing into somebody's other entity. If it is a flip though, normally a corporation and an LLC owned by the corporation would be how I would invest.
Right on. Okay. This from Gabrielle. So would having an LLC report to a C Corp provide an additional veil in California?
It provides an additional layer in any state, so California or not. So like I showed with the drawing of the box, you're creating another level of boxes that somebody would have to get through to get to the parent entity. One other thing to mention with that though too is your corporation should not really be holding that much liquid cash. It should either be, if it's active investing, it needs to be actively investing and sort of churning and growing but we need to find ways to get money out of that corporation. So you can, even if you want to hold it and lend it back out to your own business again, you can do that. But we want to get that cash out of there, get it into a Wyoming holding company. So that way you can then re-lend it, say, to your corporation, lien the property with the loan, and keep reinvesting. But we don't like the corporation to hold a lot of cash.
Got it. So I've got a question here. Okay, I don't know if you can see it, but it's from Mary J. So if you already have an LLC set up on rental number 1, and it's a member managed and owned by Mary J, right? Can she now change it so that it goes to so that a Nevada LLC can own it? And the second part of that question is the Nevada LLC supposed to own it or manage rental number 1 LLC?
Okay, Mary, I can give you, I can give you a couple of answers. So there's a couple different ways to set up rentals depending on what you're trying to do. If you're looking for an out-of-state entity or some sort of out-of-state entity protection, you could put that rental property in a land trust. So the land trust and the trustee of that land trust would technically own it. And you can even set up an anonymous trustee for that LLC. The beneficiary would be, I tend to not use Nevada as much anymore just because it's so costly to maintain. But the beneficiary would be a Wyoming LLC. Or if you just want to, I have lots of it's almost probably a 50-50 split these days. Put that rental property in a California LLC, have it owned by the Wyoming holding company, and have it member managed. That's another way to do it. So if you already have a California LLC, what I would do is, it says it's member managed by you right now. I would basically swap that to a Wyoming LLC, so you have a layer of anonymity. One piece I'll tell you, and it's always, people always ask, is, okay, so I can change my LLC, but will it always show that I've owned it? Yeah, it's like a chain of title, but what it looks like is somebody else acquired it, or another entity acquired it at some point.
Got it. So I have another question from Paul. Carl, you had mentioned not to put stock ownership in your personal name. What entity should one use for stock ownership and why?
So normally it is an LLC. If you're trying to get some tax benefit out of the LLC, a lot of times it'll be a Wyoming LLC that's taxed as a partnership, owned partly by your corporation and partly by either a disregarded or sole proprietor entity and that corporation. What we're trying to accomplish on that side, or what is accomplished on that side, I should say, is that you basically get all the benefits of being or having trader status. So to be distinguished from dealer status, it's trader status. If you just link the corporation in with a guaranteed payment to partner to that corporation, you can take a lot of the same benefits you would have gained as being a trader. I use the entity there because, like I said, if something happens to you in your individual life, that stock account just looks like another cash account to an attorney.
Get it. I've got a question here from RC. Now, I missed this, but what does RA mean in all 50 states?
Oh, good question. Sorry, sometimes I suppose I flow into abbreviations. RA means registered agent. So any entity that's filed needs to file a registered agent with a Secretary of State. A lot of folks make the mistake of putting yourself as a registered agent. All that's doing is putting your personal name, and if you're using your personal address on it, you're now given away to anybody who can even access the Secretary of State website, your personal name and address. And if they see you then connected as a manager on that entity or a member, that's a pretty clear indication you own that thing.
I know that. Okay, so this question's, you know, my background is lead generation, so I know how to find. So this is from Paul. Is a single member S Corp required to give a salary or not? And Paul's heard different answers from different CPAs.
Yes. If it's generating active income, you're required to pay a reasonable salary, whether it's one owner or multiple.
I got it. And this is from Chuck. I have the understanding that I would have to pay California LLC fees for an out-of-state LLC. Is this correct?
It can be, Chuck. We would have to look at the type of entity. A lot of times there are workarounds with use of different trusts on the ownership side. So we look at that, and trust me, I have spent many hours arguing with many professionals. So that would be one of the things you would discuss in your individual consult. Also, I see CB asked if we offer bookkeeping. We do.
I was saving that for the last question. There you go. Wouldn't any this is from Paul, wouldn't any out-of-state LLC be required, for example, Wyoming, be required to register in California by the FTB? Then you would still need to pay California and possibly compromise anonymity. What do you think about that?
So a couple of distinctions here. Even if you, so I have clients who choose to expose their holding company to California. So number one, exposing to the franchise board doesn't necessarily mean that you have to foreign file it into California. So that's number one. Number two is if you actually look at the statutory language, there are some very narrow paths which we can interpret to say, well, what do you own? If I own a personal property trust that owns an LLC, do I own that LLC out of state? So that's why I say that individual consult is important, because there are some discussions and decisions that should be made and potential risks taken into account. So we want to make sure that, yes, you have all the information at your fingertips so that you can make the correct decision for you. Like I said, my preference, or sort of the clients I work with in California, tends to be about 50-50. It depends on how many entities you need or have, and what level of comfort do you have in paying the franchise tax.
Got it. So I can answer this one. Yes, CB, we will have a recording after it processes. Sometimes it takes a couple hours for these recordings to process, and then I'll send it out to the mailing list too. Okay. This is from Lan. Can Lan change back to C Corp after he's elected as an S Corp?
Yes. So I believe there's a timeline attached, but you can revoke the S election. So when you set up a corporation, its default is a C corporation. You have to elect to be treated as an S, but yes, generally you can revoke the S election.
Okay, so I think we've caught up on questions other than are there any more questions that are directed toward Carl? I would have to have a recording of this, Carl. I'm already going. I'm going to sit back and just watch this for 2 hours and
all right.
learn.
So, Carl, great information. Do you have any last words you want to share with our audience today?
I would just say take advantage of the free book from Clint. It's a great starter. It goes into some more details of what some of the stuff we touched on, and of course, take advantage of that free strategy session. I mean, it's free. It just takes a little bit of time, and you'll get a visual depiction of what you're currently doing and the way we would suggest to do it. There's no additional commitment. This isn't a, but wait, there's more type scenario. It's literally where Lori has asked us to, we like working with Lori. We like working with the group. We want to be able to provide you the information. So the only thing that's holding you back is getting your free book and sitting down for your strategy session.
And don't forget to.
Yeah, I can say, firsthand that I use you guys for my taxes. I use you for legal, my entity structure, and bar none, you guys have got all, as we call it, the legs of the stool together. And it's a great place to find the information that you need. It's like you just pick up the phone, you consult your advisor, and it's like, boom, you're moving forward. So I appreciate the services you offer, and that's why I'm bringing it to the group.
And Jeff, just a quick correction there. I gave you the wrong number for display. My direct line at my office is 702-805-0764.
Okay.
You put
Lori,
that in. Yeah.
Lori, I had a question about the coaching. It was an early question. Can we go back to that? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Let me unshare my screen here. That way.
This was from RC, and let me go back. So RC was curious about, and by the way, everyone that sent me an email already for the application, thank you. I will get on that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So RC asked, what do you mean by accountability calls, right? What do those mean?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the strategy change for investing that you had referred to? This is an early question. I just wanted to wait till the end.
Sure. So in the coaching, the first thing we do is we sit down, basically 8 hours, 2 different sessions, and map out exactly what plan you want for investing in real estate for you. Because everybody has different risk tolerances, everybody has different skills, genius zones, etc. And so it's not a one size fits all, it's finding the strategy that works for you. Now, in addition to that, there's some strategies that work better in correcting markets versus markets that are basically level versus markets that are going up. And so we take a look at where we are in the market cycle, and then we adjust the strategies for that also. As far as the accountability, after we've put together your business vision and your life vision, we map out the next 3 months, and then we have weekly calls to make sure that you are moving forward towards those goals that fit into your vision and hold you accountable to those. So it's a whole life approach to real estate investing and finding the freedom that you're looking for so that you can enjoy the life that you want to enjoy. Hopefully that answered the question.
And the strategy question, is that something you'd rather?
No, the strategy is based on each person's individual
I get it. Okay.
talents and genius zones, because some people are going to be good at wholesaling, some people are going to be good at cold calling, some people, there's just different skills, and so that comes in with each person.
Thank you for that. I think so. Carl, would you mind telling me your phone number once again, because I did send out the wrong number, please.
Yeah, no, that's fine. My office line is 702-805-0764.
Boom. Okay. That's it.
Awesome.
That's all I have, Lori.
That's all I have. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and we will see you in September. Take care, be safe, and go out and enjoy the weather while we still have good weather. Talk to you later.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you,
It's relevant, it's right now.